Thanks for sharing your garden with us. And now we're going to be turning our attention to some wonderful edible plants or edible fruits that we can be growing in our gardens. I'm joined by Amanda Moon from It's About Thyme. And Amanda, this is a hot topic right now. Everybody wants to grow edibles.
Absolutely. There's been a trend that has been developing over the last couple of years where people are trying to get back to the basics.
Right.
And if our water is going to be such a scarce resource, why not put it towards something that then we can reuse?
Right. Well, you have these wonderful fruit trees that you've brought. And we're going to start by talking about some things that a few years ago nobody ever talked about growing in Texas. These are the olives.
Absolutely.
And I'm very excited about the olive industry generally in Austin and Central Texas, but also just for gardening plants. These are beautiful, really beautiful trees, aren't they?
They're stunning. Just the difference in texture and color that we get from normal fruit trees is so nice.
Yeah. Well, we have three different kinds of olive we're going to be talking about. We're going to start with the one that has probably become the backbone of the olive industry in Texas. That's Mission olive. And let's talk a little bit about the kind of cultural requirements and what people can expect in the way of fruit here.
Well, the Mission olive, which was first brought over to America, to California, has made its way to Texas, and they started growing it in the mid-1990s and thought, certainly we've got the right climate here to be able to produce olives. And the Mission olive is the one that they started with. It's proving to have the most cold hardiness, loves the drought, loves the heat. It's fairly shallow rooted, so we can get away with growing it even in our rocky soil.
Sure.
It's got some deer resistance to it as well.
All right, some deer resistance,
well,
carefully noted.
You've got to be careful because anything that you plant from a nursery is going to have been heavily fertilized and heavily watered. And so you've got to let that shake out before it becomes more or less palatable to the deer.
I see. Okay. And these are plants that do bear the fruit.
Absolutely.
And, you know, a lot of times with fruit trees, it requires multiple trees, et cetera.
The Mission is actually self-pollinating.
Self-pollinating,
It's a little bit slower to produce than some other varieties of olives. Roughly 5 to 7 years, you'll start to see production.
Okay.
It's got a fairly quick growth rate to it. And what was wonderful is the 2 years that we've had recently where we got into the single and the low teens as far as temperatures, these survived with barely a dent. And yet the suspicion for years was that they would not.
Right. Okay, so be on the lookout for the Mission olives.
The Mission olive.
And these get how large?
You're looking at 15 to 20 feet.
Okay, all right, good to know.
There is a variety called Arbacana that is also being used as production here. It is a smaller olive tree, and so if you have a less room in your yard, you can still do something that is a fruiting variety without the necessary space.
Okay, and if you have no space whatsoever, you can go to Little Ollie, which is about as compact an olive as you could hope for.
Yeah, you're looking at 3 to 5 feet. You can keep it pruned. It is evergreen. It's going to have the same drought, heat, deer resistance as the others, but it's not going to produce the fruit. So it's going to be something that's going to ornamental only, very low maintenance, evergreen.
Right, and beautiful plant.
Beautiful plant.
And this is something, and of course a lot of people, why would you grow an olive if it doesn't have olives on it? Well, take a look at this.
The texture is stunning.
The color as well. I love that cool color, and I just think it's a great addition to our plant palette. It goes so well with our native plants.
It is, and I think it's nice to be able to bring in something other than just rosemary as an evergreen backdrop that has a little bit different shape to it.
There you go. Okay, the next olive we have is it's just called Mediterranean?
It's a regular Mediterranean olive. Basically what you're looking at with those is they're a landscape specimen.
Okay.
They're also non-fruiting, so if you're not wanting to have to deal with the cleanup, then you'd want to go with this if you're just looking for style and color and shape.
Okay, and that is something that people do need to be aware of with the fruiting varieties, is that, if you don't harvest them, you're going to have olive litter.
Absolutely.
Which, some people can live with.
I don't mind.
The critters in the garden would certainly appreciate it,
That's
probably. Right. But the Mediterranean olive, again, non-bearing, but very beautiful, and cold hardy as well.
Exactly.
So all the benefits we've talked about thus far.
Yeah, occasionally they'll get nipped, they'll get knocked down. If we have a very rare event, they could knock them close to the ground, but normally they will come right back up.
Okay, well, we've talked about the olives. Another hot plant right now are the pomegranates. And there are multiple different kinds of these. And I didn't know there was a distinction between dwarf pomegranates and compact, but you've brought a compact form. And again, extremely attractive little shrub.
It is, it is. It's got real tight leaves, the beautiful hot orange flowers in the summertime that you get with the standard pomegranates. It is going to produce a smaller fruit, a little bit astringent, really not something that you would put on your ice cream. But otherwise, it's just a stunning landscape specimen for tighter yards.
And I love the flowers on these as well. And pomegranates are tough as nails.
You can't kill them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing some that have been on homesteads for 100 years here in Texas, through everything we could dish at them.
Yeah, they're extremely, extremely tough plants. And you can get some that are bearing that will produce a fruit that you can put on your ice cream. And the next one we're going to talk about is the most common one, in fact, in the U.S. right now.
The wonderful pomegranate, which is the one that you would buy in the grocery store at $2 or $3 a piece. You can actually grow it your own home, and it will produce enough to feed the neighborhood. Still beautiful orange flowers. It's got some deer resistance to it. Extremely drought tolerant, heat tolerant, and although it goes dormant in the wintertime, it has no problems.
Occasionally pomegranates get a little thorny. How does the wonderful do in that category?
You're still going to get a little bit, but I haven't noticed an abundance of thorns on them.
Yeah, well, and that's not such a bad thing. Keeps the deer at least cautious.
A little bit, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Right. So great plants, though. I love the pomegranates.
I do too.
And the next one we're going to talk about, maybe it's close to the top. It's certainly in the top 5 of my favorite native trees, and that's the Mexican persimmon. And you brought one in from your own yard that's bearing right now.
Yeah, the Mexican or Texas persimmon, native to our area. Loves the rocky soil, grows beautifully in it, can take full sun to part shade, so it works as an understory tree. Produces green that turn to black persimmons. They are smaller, but they're edible. Not only for wildlife, but for us. High seed content, but they work really well with jams and jellies.
Yeah, and you actually were saying that you just sampled some recently.
I had one, yeah. I actually, this morning, I had a couple that were ripe on my tree, and so I went ahead and tasted them, and they just have a wonderful, smooth, sweet flavor. That you can just imagine on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
And I have to say that just in terms of the form of this plant, you get that beautiful bark, which is crepe myrtles like
Very smooth, yes.
and the twisting branches that you can work with if you're one of those kind of pruning types, which I am. Just a phenomenal plant.
They're wonderful as a specimen in your yard. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, loquats are also very popular right now, and this is one that produces fruit in abundance.
It does.
And
in a
depends on
mild
the
year.
years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the loquat tree is mostly evergreen. Of course, it will push out new leaves and drop its old ones, but it's rarely without foliage. In a mild winter, you will have an abundance of roughly quarter-size orange fruit, orange yellow fruit, that actually tastes like a cross between an apricot and a pear, or apricot and a plum. Very tasty.
Incredibly tasty.
They still have seeds, but very tasty.
Sometimes, I didn't know, I've seen loquats sold as ornamental plants and for years and years and years, and didn't even think about the fruit.
Yeah.
And then I knew somebody from Mexico was walking with him through the neighborhood, and he saw that. It's like, oh,
yeah.
He called them níspero, which is the word they use for loquat in Mexico. He started gobbling them down and said, oh, I got to try that.
Exactly, and that's kind of how it came to me this year in the spring, as one of my customers had them just full in her yard, and I went home with a paper bag of them.
Right.
And they were just fantastic, and yet here again, you almost can't kill them. They've been grown here for years.
Yeah. Real briefly, got to mention figs as well. Just a standard, probably the easiest fruit to grow in Texas.
Oh, without question. As long as you have space and full sun, you need very little else.
Yeah.
And they will go. You want to do Alma Celeste, Brown Turkey, Texas Everbearing, Black Mission are some great varieties for this area.
Well, you just named them all in a hurry, and that's great. This one has a striking leaf form. They are, I think, ornamental in their own right.
Yes.
Just beware that they do grow to a certain scale.
That's right. They can hit 20 by 20 if they're given the opportunity.
Right. Well, and that's not a bad thing. Some people need those corners filled up, but anyway.
And occasionally our winters will knock them back and keep them in control.
All right. Well, Amanda, this has been awesome.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for sharing all this information with us and coming from It's About Time to do so. And
Absolutely.
coming up next is our friend Daphne.